To make soups and stews look pretty exciting for a photograph can sometimes take a little bit of work. And so I've got a few tricks that I want to show you on how I deal with soups or anything liquidy and chunky in a bowl that you want to make look really beautiful for presentation and for food styling. So what I've got here is I've got some minestrone soup in a measuring cup, and really this is cold. This is ice cold. It's not hot. For the sake of this photo, it doesn't matter if it's going to be hot. We don't want to show any steam. We just want to show a bowl of soup. So what I do is I take my shallow bowl. I usually work with a shallow bowl. This, unless you're doing a soup that maybe belongs in a crock, like a French onion soup or something like that, and it belongs in like a deeper sort of vessel, I always try to choose a shallower bowl. It's easier to shoot. It's easier to light. You can see in it. It's wide. So that's why I've chosen this bowl. And I'm going to start by taking some of the liquid out of this soup, and I'm just going to pour it in here. Okay, and so what I'm left with are just some of the chunks from the soup. A false bottom is essentially creating a little bit of lift in the center of the bowl so that we can showcase some of the chunky bits in our soup. When you plate soup at home, you dump it in a bowl, all of the chunky bits that are delicious to eat are sort of floating around, and they don't really, stand out so much for the sake of a photo. So we create a false bottom, we add the paper towels in there, and I start spooning in some of the beans and the pasta and all the bits that are in this minestrone. And we start by piling some up on top. And I usually just go right on top and try to let it fall naturally. That's how I always start off things, trying to do it somewhat naturally, even though there's paper towel underneath of it. Right? And you do this, and you're going to see, you can see the paper towel right now, but eventually you're not going to see it because we're going to just hide it. So I start like this, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add the liquid. And since the idea of minestrone is, it is a chunky soup, it is a hearty soup, I want to really show that all of that is present. So I'm going to start adding some of this liquid. And really only enough, we need a little bit more than that, but really only enough to come up about, 3/4 of the way. Let's say about like that. You start looking around. I usually look at it from the side. And then once I've got it here, I'll start with a skewer, and I'll start moving things around. You can also use tweezers. It depends on what I'm dealing with. Sometimes I start with a skewer and then I move over to tweezers. But I start just kind of futzing with it like this. Oh, I've got too many carrots over in this corner, so I want to move some of them over. Or there's a concentration of macaroni over here, so I'm going to move some of those over. I'm styling it for the camera looking this way, right? If the camera's looking this way, you can style it. You can either turn it or you can move things around like this. I like a little bit of these greens, so I want to put those on top. And I think it needs a little bit more liquid, so I'm going to add a little bit more liquid to it as well. Okay. So we've got that false bottomed. And then I always like to add some fresh herbs, especially with soups and stews that have been cooking for a long time. Usually the vegetables break down and they're not as vibrant as when they start off. And by adding just a few little herbs, it makes all the difference. It just brightens it up, it livens it up. With something like this, basil completely makes sense. You could add a few shavings of Parmesan cheese, really nice big peelings of Parmesan or Pecorino Romano. You could add some lemon zest to the top. You have a number of different ways you could garnish it. This is essentially how I deal with soups and stews. And if you notice any of the rim of the dish that's gotten a little bit messy, you can just take a wet paper towel or a Q-tip and you can just go in here and gingerly kind of wipe it up. Make sure you don't smudge it, but that's basically it. Those are my tricks for styling soups and stews.